Right.
Hi, everyone. This is the Cloak and Dagger weekly briefing with Albert Marko and myself, Tony Nash. Got a couple things to cover this week. First, we're going to look through the Russia oil embargo and other embargoes that the U.S. are doing. We're also going to look at Venezuela's drug running or alleged drug running. We're also going to look at China's Commie Plenum. So those would be very fun for us to talk through. Albert,
Yeah.
talk to us about this Russia embargo. Is it going to end the war between Russia and Ukraine?
I mean, end it, probably not. Urge the Russians maybe 20% more to try to end it, possibly. The thing is they have built in, ways to get around U.S. sanctions that, I mean, I really just don't understand, like, what really does it accomplish except for maybe drive the price of oil up 5-10%. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to really move the needle either way, to be quite honest with you.
So I was talking through this with somebody last night, and it seems to me that once Russia-Ukraine is settled, Russia will become a marginally US aligned government. Just bear with me while I lay this out, right?
Mhm.
Russia, China are connected. All Russia has to do is become slightly more US aligned, and that comes with trade, that comes with lifting embargoes, that comes lifting all this treasury sanctions, everything else. And then China effectively feels isolated diplomatically because their nightmare of being encircled by US allies becomes a reality. So is that, I mean, I know that's not like I know Russia will not become like a mid-90s US ally where they naively trusted Americans and then we totally screwed them. But do you think it's possible that Russia becomes marginally more pro-US once the Ukraine war is settled?
I don't know about that description of more marginally US. I mean, more marginally Western oriented, quite, quite surely. Yeah, I think them aligning, them at least playing nicely with the European Union is certainly on the table. I mean, that's where a lot of their products go to, anyways, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, get a couple more German prime ministers on the boards of Russian oil companies.
Yeah, I mean, really. I mean, that's the most likely outcome. I mean, it's always the U.S. is always the big boogeyman, no matter whether
Mhm.
you're European, Chinese, or Russia, wherever. It doesn't really matter. That's just not going to change in
Right.
anytime soon. But yeah, I could definitely see them being more Western aligned, and then the Chinese would likely try to follow suit to reclaim market share in the EU again. But the problem is, all these are export driven economies,
All of
right?
them.
All of them are. So naturally, they're all competitors on some level or another.
Yep, that's
And
right.
each one
It's
of them,
often missed. That single point is often missed in the discussion.
yeah. Well, I mean, people wrongly assume that each one of these players, EU or Russia or China, or even India for that matter, are consumption based economies. And although they do consume a lot of things, a majority of their money comes from exports,
Yep.
right? And because of that,
Even the French.
even the French, right? So because of that, it keeps the United States on a different pedestal than the rest of
Yep.
the rest of these players.
Yep. The US is the necessary consumer of their goods.
It's not just a necessary consumer, but it's also the issuer of the reserve currencies, the thing
Yep.
that settlements get transacted through. It's the end all be all of everything concerning trade, and people don't want to, either they overlook it or they just don't want to accept it.
Yeah, but Albert, we're in a debasement world and the US dollar doesn't mean anything.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, give me all your dollars then, if that's the
Right,
case.
exactly.
Anyone that thinks that the dollar's dying and whatever,
Right.
hand them on over. I'll give
Exactly.
you 30% of the value.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. Okay, so how will Russia circumvent this? Is it same old India, kind of Sharjah, UAE type of thing, or
Yeah, I mean they have pipelines that go to China, and they're the biggest consumers right now. They have ghost fleets all over the place that
yeah,
send product within the EU and Eastern Europe and Turkey. For
yep,
that, most likely it'll go through, a lot of the stuff will flow through Turkey with fake paperwork. I mean they've been doing it for years, so
yep,
it's nothing new.
yep. Okay. And do you see it making much of a difference near term, say before the end of the year?
No, 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 definitely not. Definitely not. This would be a 2026 thing. It takes a while for these things to bite, and it's,
Yep,
like I said, most of the stuff has been bought from the EU that they need to buy. So I don't really see this being such a big issue until probably like April or May of next year.
yep. That's it. I
Yeah.
mean, from my assessment, the winter is coming on. The war is likely to wind down a little bit through the winter.
Hmm.
So, we're kind of end of Q1 26 before there's big movement there, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, let's move on to Latin America and Venezuela, Colombia, and the U.S. kind of
Mm.
taking out these kind of drug boats, that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure I understand the assessment here. So is the assessment that fentanyl and those goods come into, say, Venezuela, then they go from Venezuela to Mexico, and then they go into the US? Is that kind of the base case for it, and why the US is taking out Venezuelan kind of drug boats?
Yeah, that's the superficial explanation of what's going on. I mean, the
Right.
bigger the deeper explanation is it's a Russian, Chinese, and Iranian proxy,
Of
right?
course.
And Hezbollah has been running narcotics and illicit arms through Maracaibo for God a decade now, more,
Yeah.
right? Into the U.S. and those illicit funds go back to the IRCG. I mean, the U.S. hasn't, said that blatantly, but I mean, you and I have talked about this for like 12 years.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah, so
Long
it's
time.
not. I mean, that's what's going on. The other issue is, Blinken installed a lot of these leftist leaders in Latin America, and again, ideology gets in the way of logical, choices and diplomatic affairs, and
Yep.
it was a complete mistake. And each one of those leaders have turned against the United States in favor of China,
Yep.
and now it's cleanup time. And these drug these drug boat attacks are not simply to eliminate the narcotics routes, but also to warn both the Colombians and the Venezuelans that you're next if you keep this up, right?
Yep.
It
So
change or we'll force you to change.
is the strategy there kind of a pincer move on Brazil? So, Argentina's an ally, then we take the north of Latin America, and then we kind of close in on Brazil and convert Brazil to a U.S. ally. Is it something like
Yeah,
that,
it's
roughly?
it's it's yeah, it is, but it's difficult with Lula there. I mean, and Brazil
Of
is a
course.
big country, and Lula's grip there is pretty profound, right?
Yep.
He's got all the favelas, all the favela gang leaders on the payroll, and
Yep.
they concoct votes whenever they need to. So it's a
Yep.
little bit more. It's more difficult there. The U.S. can't have direct intervention into Brazil because Brazil's not really not on the radar for the drug trade, right?
Yep.
So that's an entirely different story with Brazil at the moment. But
Yep.
focus really is on Venezuela at the moment.
Undoing the incompetence of Blinken is very difficult. It's
That
unbelievably
guy,
difficult.
that guy is probably the worst Secretary of State that in the history
Says
of
Madeleine
all.
Albright, at least.
Oh, jeez, he makes Madeleine Albright look like a genius. You know.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yeah. Okay. Interesting. So what's going to happen? Do you think the U.S. is going to end up pulling a kind of a Panama 1990 thing where we land troops there and, indict?
I wish, I wish. I don't really know what they're up to. Honestly, if it was just me, I'd lob some rockets at the palace and take them out, But, Maduro's bike gangs and narcotic, the cartels are pretty strong on the streets. Unless you do have an intervention like that, like Panama, I don't really see Maduro getting deposed. So I don't really know what they're trying to achieve here. I mean, are you trying to put pressure on Maduro so the opposition rises up? The opposition is not
That doesn't work.
armed. To do to do this type of thing, the opposition has to be willing to go to battle, to war, right? And right now, the Venezuelan opposition is nowhere near such an
Right.
event. So I
And
don't
so
know
then you
what.
get an Iraq type of situation, right? Where
I don't even think
you
it's even that
invade,
far. Yeah, but I don't even think it's that far. Listen, if we invaded, things would change overnight over there, right? It's a completely different atmosphere than Iraq. I mean, the Venezuelans have been begging for change there,
yeah,
but
that's fair. Yep.
there's no opposition there to speak of in terms of willing to lay their lives on the line for Venezuela at the moment. Most of them are gone, right? They're and the small opposition that's there are just intellectuals.
Yeah. So you don't have like a luxury opposition like a Chalabi was for Iraq. Like some guy sitting in DC saying, I'll go in and take it over. And so there's nobody offshore who could be installed to
I mean,
run.
yeah, installed. Yes, you could if that's the case. If they put troops on the ground and did it, yeah, that you certainly would, right? But I don't know. I don't think that there's going to be troops on the ground in Venezuela. And if that's the case, I don't really see a Venezuelan opposition rising up and starting to hang some of the Venezuelan government officials because that's what's got to happen.
They've
Like
been in
bullets
power a
change.
long time.
Yeah, see, listen, bullets change governments faster than votes do, right? That's always been the case.
Yeah.
And right now, the like I said, the opposition in Venezuela is just not on that scale to do such a thing. Even with the U.S. threatening, A, B, and C, unless the U.S. physically intervenes and takes over the palace and arrests Maduro and sends him back to Guantanamo, I don't really see what we're doing here.
Yeah. I think they will eventually. I think they
I hope
will.
so.
I think there might be a surprise soon. I don't have any sort of inside information, but I think given the tactics that the U.S. military honed in the Middle East with, gangs and other things, I think they're not afraid of that type of warfare anymore. So I think it'll be kind of sooner than it's going to be before mid 26. I think there's going to be some.
I hope. I mean, the problem then becomes, what does that do to oil prices? Because Venezuelan heavy crude is a significant portion of imports for Chevron and Valero and others, right, for our refineries.
I think it
So,
helps. I think it helps oil prices in the U.S. I think it hurts oil prices in China. Because they can't extract that crude anymore. I think it becomes a real problem for China as you take out the Chinese allies and say Russia, and again, it'd still be an ally, but it won't be as the tight partnership that they have. You take out
mhm.
Venezuela, you take out. I think this is it's a coordinated strategy to reduce Chinese influence globally.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I just wish it was a little bit more strategic and a little bit faster, right? I mean, taking out Venezuela certainly helps the United
Oh
States
yeah.
and hurts China tremendously, and I'm
Hmm.
all for that. I've been an advocate for that for since 2017.
Yep. Venezuela,
So
Colombia, Ecuador. I mean, taking those three and kind of helping them turn around would be really interesting.
yep.
Okay, so let's talk about China. So the CCP got together this past week,
Hmm.
put together their hopes and dreams, and before that, they took out 7 or 8 senior generals or whatever. And so a lot of internet people were saying, or social media people were saying that Xi Jinping was going to step down during the plenum, which didn't happen. But I think a lot of think tankers and academics and other people like to comment on this stuff, but these are meetings where the decisions are made before they sit down, right? There are no surprises that come out of these things.
No, of course not. I mean, this the normal, telenovela of the Chinese way.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
You know, take out a few guys, arrest them, jail them for life, corruption,
Right.
blah blah blah. I mean, as Xi has to do this routinely to make sure that his network is steadily in control. I mean, obviously there's a lot of rumblings in China of trying to replace Xi because this trade war is not done well for the Chinese economy,
Nope.
right? And
Inflation has accelerated in a big way, which that spiral is ugly once it starts.
the unemployment for the youth unemployment is a significant problem. You know, the middle class there that has grown so much for the past 15 years has taken a downturn, which is not good for the Chinese. Yeah, listen, there's a growing contingent of Chinese, and you know this better than I do. That there's a growing contingent of Chinese that just want to get business done at the
That's
moment,
right.
right? They don't want to talk about Taiwan invasion. They don't want to talk about superiority on the global scale versus the United States. They
Yep.
just want to get business done. And I
Yep.
think at some point there will be a critical juncture where Xi Jinping is impeding that too much and he will get replaced.
Yep, exactly right. Most of the Chinese people I know and speak with, they like Americans, and most Americans I know like Chinese people. It's not, there isn't this kind of Cold War US Russia thing between the US and China necessarily. There are a lot of relationships, there are a lot of business and personal relationships. And there isn't among most Chinese people, at least that I speak with, there isn't this hatred of America. I think it's something that's contrived. There was some gossip. There were big troop movements in China a couple weeks ago of tanks and machinery and people being called up and all this stuff. And there was a lot of gossip that they were going to invade Taiwan among the usual suspects, right? And it was a couple of different exercises that they had planned that they were calling up for, and they just happened to be scheduled at the same time.
I mean, when is this Taiwan's going to get invaded crowd just going to give up? Because it's been
They
so.
won't, because let's say in the small likelihood that it happens, they will all declare victory when it happens, right?
That's
If it
fine if you,
happens,
that's fine if you want to declare victory and you're just starting to say it and it happens 6 months later or a year later, right? This
or
this
2 weeks
argument
later, right?
or
The
2 weeks or
problem with
whatever.
political forecasting is if you don't put a timeline to it. See, we discuss timelines here and likely timelines, right? But most geopolitical people, they don't put timelines to their expectations. So therefore, anything can happen at any time. We talk
That's
about timelines.
ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous because I can sit there and say the United States is going to end as an empire at some point in time. Yeah, give it 100, 200, 300
That's what
years.
people
Oh, you're
do.
right. Oh, great. Right. But like I've been dismissing this Taiwan invasion nonsense for so long that it's getting
Yeah,
tired. Right. It
yeah.
really is. It's like either put a timeline on it. Give me a response to when I say it's not going to happen because of A, B, and C. And this is like how long has this been that you and I have been talking about that? I know
Oh my
for
gosh.
me, the Taiwan invasion thing's been since like 2016,
I don't think I
right?
had any gray hair when we started talking about it.
Yeah,
So
and I'm just like, it's always hear the same nonsense. Oh, Taiwan's gonna get invaded. U.S. can't do anything. Blah blah blah. Well, why haven't they done it?
yeah,
Oh, they're
why?
just waiting for
It's
the exact right time. I'm like, what the?
the problem that most of these guys don't realize is that we've had a status quo in place since the 70s. And for that type of movement, there would be so much loss of life and property that nobody wants that. So it is a nice talking point to get the domestic audience riled up in China, and it's a nice talking point to raise funds against if you're a think tanker in the US or a consultant for DoD or whatever. But aside from that,
Same.
and we know a guy who got an appointment because he stirred that up for 5 or 6 years, right? And so it's a convenient talking point, but the reality of it, I would spend almost a month in Taiwan every year while I lived in Asia for 15 years. If you know what's happening on the ground, I did work with the Chinese government. I know what the thinking is, and nobody really wants to do that. You get the hardcore partisan hacks on the Taiwan side, the DPP side, on the China side, a super minority of the CCP are actually taking this seriously. But aside from that, nobody wants that.
There's just no benefit to taking Taiwan. Like I don't understand. Like what's it gonna give? What's it gonna possibly give the
Yeah.
Chinese to go into have that much risk in a military conflict to gain what exactly?
Yeah.
A group of people that doesn't even like you. You know what I mean? A couple factors that
Yeah.
your elite already are invested in.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what I
the
mean?
analogy is made that it's going to be like Hong Kong, right? They'll just gradually take it over. But
Completely different. That is a
yeah, exactly.
completely different scenario.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. So that's I think deprioritized. It wasn't a big talking point or talking point at all at the plenum, I think. But one of the things that did happen that people have noticed in these kind of small bureaucratic moves at the plenum was they moved technology and innovation from the top priority to the second priority. So it's these types of small moves that people like make a big deal about. And the fact is, it has to be the second priority. Why? Because Made in China 2025, which came out 10 years ago,
Mhm.
is the driver, and we wrote about this earlier this week, is the driver of the techno-nationalism that we have in the US today. After Made in
Mhm.
China 2025 came out, that's when Make in India came out. That's when all the reshoring of stuff in the US and other stuff came out, right? So Made in China 2025 was the first thing that really drove the kind of techno-nationalism that we have today. So it's been a little bit deprioritized, partly because of that, but also partly because China's made progress in technology, right? So it doesn't need to
They
have,
have, but they just copy stuff. I mean, let's
of
just be
course,
honest
yeah.
with you. There's no real innovation out of the Chinese. I mean, they sit there and prop up some airplane or some submarine or some hypersonic that is like 40-year-old technology, right? And they have like copies of GPT or whatever, and they sit there. Oh, it's not innovative. The
Well,
Chinese have never been innovative.
right. Vietnamese airlines, I can't remember the name of the airline, but they stopped using their Comac jets. They stopped doing it earlier this month. So they don't use that Chinese tech anymore. They've sidelined it. You saw the news, I'm sure, earlier this week where the Chinese engineers were trying to reverse engineer the ASML equipment, which is
Yeah.
super leading edge equipment. So, it's hard to, it's hard to say, where the innovation really is. What they do well is the D side of R&D. They do the development side exceedingly well.
Hmm.
The R side is a question. Do they really do that level of research? I think there's a case to be made that they can, but I would say where they excel is on the D side because you can't have a lot of research when you can't have free thinking. And you get free thinking in the US around
Hmm.
research. Generally, you don't get free thinking in China. You get free thinking in Japan, believe it or not, in Taiwan, in Korea. You don't necessarily get it in China because those guys who think differently find somewhere else to live.
Yeah, I mean you're spot on that. To be quite honest with you, I mean the Chinese just they build airplanes like Gen 6
Sure,
stealth
they
blah,
do.
blah, just because it looks like it
Exactly. It's
doesn't
got the
mean it
skin.
operates the same way as an F-35. It's just
Right.
a silly notion. And a lot of these DoD guys, they prop that up because they want a budget.
It's about budget. It's
I
about
get
getting
I
budget.
get that, and I am all in favor of the United States staying a military superpower. Don't get me wrong by any means. But when you're sitting there, the wolf, crying wolf every single time some nonsense comes out of Beijing, it's like you kind of discredit yourself going forward. And like in like 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to have Democrats that saying, well, you lied about this, and this. So why should we give you a budget? That's the thing like the DOD doesn't quite understand is they already have enemies on the left and they're getting a growing list of enemies in the center, right? Don't sit there and cry wolf over every little thing because it's just
Right.
going to come back and bite you later on.
Yep. Yep, you're right. So anyway, not a lot going on just with China. Just to close that up on the plenum, not a lot going on at the plenum.
Yeah.
It was very predictable, and there wasn't the drama that many people expected. Hey, before we close this out, Albert, what are you looking at in markets? I just want to kind of get an idea of, we saw gold, come down and come back up, and we're seeing oil prices rise. We're seeing markets kind of stabilize. What are you keeping an eye on?
I mean, just the teeter totter of tech to gold to oil, right?
Right.
That's when Basant and those guys run out of room of pumping the markets using tech, they switched over to gold,
Yeah.
right? When that ran out of room because he was told that at 5,000 it creates problems for us. That gets sunk down 7%, 8%, right? And then the next thing you know, oil starts going back up. So like this like you start looking at like a merry-go-round of what assets do they use in the market to pump it, right? And it was tech and then gold and now oil and other commodities. And at that point, when does it rotate back again to tech and so on and
Real
so forth.
estate. That's what we
Real
need.
estate. Basant doesn't give a shit about real estate. That's
I
the
know.
problem. Trump does, but Basant doesn't. Right? He
Yeah.
doesn't really care. So, but like, when does tech start to come back? Start flying again? Because it's taken a little bit of a
Nasdaq's up 1.2% today.
yeah, it's today because on the rate hike,
Yeah.
speculations and whatnot. I
10
just
years down below 4.
what is
10 years
10
down below 4%.
they don't want people in the bond market. They don't get money out of the bond. They don't get. That's the thing is people don't get the government. The U.S. government does not get money having people in the bond market. They get money on the taxation of equities, right? So
Yeah.
this bubble market, benefits them greatly. Right. So
The
I'm
trading
just like
thing.
I said, I'm just watching the rotational. What's the next asset class that they use to rally the market? Obviously, oil is going to go up to a certain degree, and I think they'll rotate back into tech. Just before Christmas.
Back into tech.
Mm-hmm.
So oil's where?
Oil's up, got to be up like 5, six
It's kind
percent
of neutral today.
today. Yes, but over the past week,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. So you think rotation back into tech before Christmas, and
yes,
then we're off. So two
definitely.
rate cuts, risk on. What do you think about gold? Is gold does gold continue to rally or
I think gold goes down to
38,
3,500, right?
35? Okay.
And people will definitely get back into it again. For 2026 as inflation
Oh yeah.
gains again. So
I think let's spend a little bit of time on that because we didn't really have that as a scheduled item, but I think inflation. So I am at the end of my timeline for kind of neutral inflation.
mhm,
And I actually do think that as we head into 26, inflation becomes an issue again. So I've converted to your view.
mhm,
I really thought inflation would stay pretty muted through Q3, which it's been officially been okay.
mhm,
But as we wrote earlier this week, I'm very worried about grocery price inflation as we go into 26, the midterms. And I know you and I've talked offline about this, where you know your view is that the guys in DC care more about the equity market rally than they do
mhm.
about kind of kitchen table type of inflation. But I think as people go to the polls in 26, they're going to be thinking about how much that hamburger meat costs or how much that
Well, that's
cereal costs or whatever.
that's always the problem when it comes to economic projections and planning is like the political things start to get into the way, and as
Yeah.
inflation ticks up 4, 5, 6% in reality, it's going to be felt
Yeah.
in DC, and then all of a sudden, you're talking about rate hikes instead of rate cuts again.
Yeah. Or aggressive QT. Like
Yeah,
they'll cut rates, but they'll tighten money supply, just so that because most people's eye are on the rates, they're not looking at the QT aspect of it. It's just kind of they offset each other, right?
yeah, yeah.
So, but you can't have people, looking at CPI at 3% and go, oh yeah, CPI is 3% when you strip everything out that matters,
Yeah,
right?
when
That's
when they
just
start when they start to address inflation again, you're looking at a 20% drop in the market. You know,
so you think that's Q2? You think they're going to
Q
start doing
Q1.
Q1?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so rotate into tech at the end of the year and then market dropping Q1.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, good to know. Hey,
Yeah.
Albert, thanks. This has been
All right.
great. Have a great weekend. Thanks.
All right. Thanks,
Bye.
Tony.